Hello, and welcome to another special edition of the Modern Divorce Podcast. Today, I am joined by another political candidate, Lalani Hunsaker. Welcome to the show, Lalani.
Hi, Billy. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I want to jump right in to this sign.
Yeah,
What is this that we are looking at? This is you, right?
that is me. That is correct. It was a photo that was taken off of my private either Instagram or Facebook. And it was part of our family outtakes of family pictures. So I think, probably many of your listeners know exactly what happens at the end of family pictures when everybody stood still for so long. And then at the end, your photographer's like, okay, guys, make a silly face. And that's exactly what we all did. And that was mine. I'm Hawaiian, so we love to, throw a good shaka every once in a while. And what you don't see in that picture is the rest of my family making silly faces as well. And so that is me. And it was taken, like I said, from my personal social media page and put out on many street corners around Gilbert. So clearly not the most flattering photo used in that context. And it was never meant to be used that way, of course. So that is me to answer your question.
Okay, got it. All right. So I was wondering if this was like an AI generated image, but that makes sense. So, um, this you are running for office. Can you tell people what you're running for?
Yeah, of course. So I am a first time candidate, meaning I have never run for political office before in any capacity in any state. We've lived in Gilbert 19 years, and I am running for the Arizona State House in Legislative District 14. It's an open seat, which means that the person who is occupying that seat for the last 8 years is no longer running for office. And so that seat is open. I am a Republican, been a Republican my whole life. And so I am running as a Republican for that office to represent the people of Gilbert down at the Arizona State House.
Okay. All right. And so the primary is coming up. It's just right around the corner. And is it accurate that only one Republican will be on the ballot for this position that you're running for?
So that's a great question. So the primary is July 30th, but early voting will start right at the end of June. Between June 30th and July 1st is when voters will start to receive those ballots in the mail. And there are five candidates running for two seats to represent LD 14. So voters get to pick two. And
Mhm.
then those two Republicans will be on the general ballot for the November election.
Are all five that are running Republicans?
Yes. Yep.
Are
So
there
there are
are there any Democrats for running?
no. Nope, there are no Democrats, in LD 14.
Okay.
So there is one member of the Green Party that
Mhm.
is running, and so he will have his own primary.
Okay. Okay, so then out of the 5 of you, 2 of you will end up on the ballot for 2 seats.
Correct. That's
Okay, so
correct.
one of the most interesting things that I've learned is now that the primary is really deciding many of these local elections. So it's not entirely surprising that things are heating up, and it's really important that people vote in the primary.
Correct. Yep. So in many places, the primary serves as the general election, and the general election just becomes a formality.
Yeah,
Of course, voters still need to vote, but there's just not any choices.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to this sign, there are brass knuckles,
Mhm.
and it says lobbyist for ALA charter schools. What is that about?
Correct. So my kids have, like I said, we've lived in Gilbert for 19 years. Down in South Gilbert, I have four kids, ages 20, 18, 14, and 11. So graduated, just graduated, about to be ninth grade, about to be sixth grade.
Wow.
And yeah, so fun. My kids have been at ALA as students for this will be their 11th year.
Mhm,
We went to
mhm,
district schools
mhm,
in Chandler prior to that because our little swath of Gilbert is part of the Chandler School District, and loved their experience there. But they had friends at ALA, and so we now go to ALA Queen Creek. So that's the background on that. I was appointed to the American Leadership Academy School Board in 2019 and served in that capacity. That was appointed, not elected. So when I said I've never run nor been elected for office, that was a appointed position. I did that for 2 years, and then I was hired to come in house and do their public policy. And so I am not a lobbyist. Being a lobbyist is public record. You have to register down at the state. I never have been a lobbyist, nor am I currently a lobbyist, but I do work for Charter One, which is the parent company, the management company for the American Leadership Academy schools, and I do public policy. So, if there's changes to the special education requirements, then that's something that I monitor and make sure that our schools implement with fidelity. Things like that. That's what I do.
okay. So then the reason that that is there and the brass knuckles are there is because I'm extrapolating, ALA has not come out as popular, uh, following the Gilbert Goon saga. They are kind of looked at, their handling of the situation is not looked upon favorably, and the people who made the signs are just tying you to that.
I think correct. I think that there is definitely a smear campaign that my opponents are trying to create based on some of the things that have happened locally um, in our town with teen violence. And, other schools, not just ALA, have had members of their student body who have um, had to answer for those incidents that have occurred. And those are incredibly um, egregious and scary, and as a mom myself, it is something that I'm very concerned about. I have teenagers, and I think every mom who listens to your podcast knows that when we send our kids out at night that we need to be concerned. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running is I want to make sure that our kids are safe, that we don't have fentanyl on our streets, and that we're securing our border, that we know what is coming across, and we are you know, um, making sure that we have safe communities, that our law enforcement is given the tools that they need, and also doing the job that needs to be done to keep our kids and our families safe. And so, all of these reasons are things that I, as a mom, am concerned about. But unfortunately, I think that my opponents saw an opportunity here because of what I do in my professional life to take something that has happened in our community and to try to wrap that around my candidacy in a very nefarious way. And honestly, I think it's disgusting. I think that our community has been rocked by recent events. I think that we are starting um, to try to recover from that, and obviously to make sure that the legal process works. And so to be putting those things on street corners, to me, is gross.
Yeah. It's definitely the Gilbert Goon situation has absolutely become politicized.
Hmm.
Um, and we voters want to know where people stand. We want
Of
to
course.
know, where do people stand on how schools and government has handled this fallout? Can you talk to that for a minute?
So I don't obviously, my job with Charter One. All I can tell you as it pertains to ALA is that we 100%, and we, big picture, we, obviously, what I do had nothing to do with um, what happened at the schools, but we cooperated 100% with the Gilbert Police Department, and we did everything we could to make sure that every ounce of information was shared and that we cooperated to the fullest extent of the law. That has always been our position, is to do everything that we can to support anything that is happening with local law enforcement at our schools. Um, and we did that with this case. And so I don't know if that fully answered your question. Was there a second part?
Well, I mean, since you do work in policy for Charter One, are you all looking at changing any policies?
As it pertains to the schools?
Yes. And specifically in response to the violence and drugs and other things that are happening.
So, as it pertains to violence, right after all of this happened, one of the things that I was tasked with was doing a kindness campaign on all of our campuses, just to make sure. And we involved local law enforcement, local, um, the administrations from all of our schools. We also involved our student body, and they worked with their student leadership, like student government, to come up. We gave them some guardrails in terms of the types of initiatives that we wanted to see them start on campus. And then we allowed those students and the student bodies to figure out what their schools needed, in terms of how to implement these kindness campaigns on campuses. And so it was a whole initiative that we did, in the late winter, January and February, to make sure that our students understood what to look for, how to talk to one another if they saw something, to make sure that that was reported, to reinforce again with our administrations that anything that was happening on campus that seemed at all concerning needed to be reported to both families and law enforcement. And so just really cementing the fact that, we need to be kind, that kindness starts with each one of us, and that if we see something, we need to say something. And kids need to know when something happens what to do. I think as parents, we all um do that in our own homes. And in schools, we need to support families and parents and reinforce those ideas in the classroom and give kids tools to know how to treat each other at school. And so we definitely did some work and some heavy lifting on our campuses to make sure that kids knew that we had a zero tolerance policy, um, for violence, for unkindness, and to just make sure that they knew how to respond when things happen.
Got it. So no policy changes, but definitely beefing up those policies and reinforcing them and making sure that they're understood by all the students.
Correct.
Okay. The next thing on this sign is it says here that you're a staffer for Democrat hatchet man Senator Harry Reid. What's that about?
So, like I said at the start, I've always been a Republican, lifelong Republican, conservative Republican. Voted for Donald Trump every time we voted, so very conservative and proud conservative Republican. But when I got my start in politics, I graduated high school from Nevada. My family lived in Nevada. I went to college at UNLV, and I loved politics, and I really loved the Constitution and the foundations of our country. And so my desire was to get some more experience. And I thought the best way to do that would be to intern for my US Senator. At the time in Nevada, we had two senators, both were Democrats. Being a Republican, I wasn't sure what to do. So I talked to my dad, and he said, well, he's like, Harry Reid is a Nevada Democrat. He's like, it'd be a great experience. Why don't you apply and see what happens? And so I did. And I was awarded the internship, and it was a fantastic experience. When I graduated from college, there was a job open, and they offered it to me, and I took it. And this was 2000 to 2004 is when I worked for him. I was 22 years old. Um, and and he and I had a little agreement that was, if at the time he was a Nevada Democrat, and it was if he he stayed a Nevada Democrat, I would stay working for him. But the minute he kind of compromised some fundamental positions for me, that we probably would have to part ways. And so I did land, water, natural resource issues for him for 3.5 years. And then in the summer of 2004, he knew that he was going to become the majority leader of the Democratic Party. And so he threw all of his Nevada politics out the window and went hard party line. And so at that point, we were too different politically. And so I resigned. I had had my first baby, my oldest son, and my husband was almost done with law school. So it was time for me to part ways with him and to you know distance myself professionally. And so then in 2005, we moved to Arizona. And so that is my work history. I have never, tried to mask it. It is not something that I am embarrassed about. In fact, I think that it makes me a stronger candidate for this position because while I am a very conservative Republican, I do understand, um, that a lot of times you have to be able to talk to people who are not exactly the same as you, and I think that we all know that professionally, and I see that as a benefit and a strength, not a weakness. Unfortunately, my opponents would like to create something that doesn't exist, and they want to take my work history from 24 years ago now at this point and tie it, to me in a nefarious way. And so that is what that is about. And it's
What?
impossible for me to be Harry Reid's hatchet man because Harry Reid has been deceased now for many years. So,
Right, right, right.
yeah.
I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Okay, so what has your experience been like running for office so far?
It has been interesting. I mean, meeting voters, we are knocking doors 3 hours a day, and meeting voters and talking to voters has been the very best part of this whole candidacy, and that's why I'm running, is to represent the people of LD 14. I think for too long, our politicians, both in Nevada and federally, have forgotten that they are there to represent we the people. We have left, you have political party bosses who think that they can just pick the candidates that they want and continue to perpetuate the narrative that serves their own special interests. And that's ridiculous. And Arizona is in a rough spot right now. We know that we have a problem at our border. We know that we have inflation. We have home prices that are soaring. We know that we have safety issues in our community. We know that we have a water supply that is a concern. All of these things are issues that are affecting and impacting Arizona voters every single day. And then we have people who want to maintain the status quo in their sliver of power, and they don't want to increase the Republican majority. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to answer the problems of everyday voters. They want to maintain their power, and that's what they're concerned with. And I think it's disgusting. I think it needs to stop. And that's why I'm running, is to actually tackle and address the issues of the people of District 14 in Arizona.
Is this sign the only kind of dirty politics that you've experienced so far?
It's definitely the most egregious. I think, we went through a bunch of the elements of the sign. They also attacked my Hawaiian heritage with some of the slang at the top. So I think that was kind of gross. Um, but there have been other text messages that have come out that have used some of my past experience, my work experience specifically as it relates to Harry Reid in an untrue and misleading way. And so those text messages, there's been two of them. There were also some conversations at the start of this campaign where I was told that I shouldn't run, that if I did run, um, against, my opponent's wishes, that I would never be able to run for political office again, because I wouldn't be supported because no one ever goes against um, the slate and wins. And so there was definitely other political gamesmanship that has happened throughout this race, but it's culminated to this point with that sign.
Okay. Let's take a look at this text message. Okay. So what are we looking at here?
So what you're looking at here is a text thread that has a positive text and then a negative text. The positive text at the top, obviously, um, from with full disclosures and people, some of my opponents that are running for the same seat. And then in the as you scroll down, you see a negative text about me. And again, we've got, the stuff with Harry Reid on there, which we talked about, with some kind of scare tactic verbiage there. Um, and that doesn't have disclosures on it. And those texts are being sent from the same phone number, which would imply that there was some coordination between the two texts. And there were five of those total that were sent out in a similar manner. So three positive texts, two negative texts, all on the same thread connected with the same phone number.
So you do not have the blessing of the current powers that be, the current office holders, and
Correct.
they told you in no uncertain terms, unequivocally, we don't want you to run. And did they say we're going to keep you from being elected?
So they said, we don't want you to run. They said, if you choose to run without our blessing, no one has ever run and won when not being part of the slate. And if you did that and then chose to run for office at another date in the future, you would never receive the support of those who support the slate.
You'll pay now and forever.
Correct. Yep,
Oh,
exactly.
goodness. Okay. Well,
And
will you tell? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And I think again, we're seeing this theme of these political power brokers, or they think they're political power
Mhm.
brokers. And that's where the real, I believe, if you want to use the term war in this country, exists. It's between the political power broker sides. It's really not between we the people. Like, we the people just want to get our kids to school. We want to we want to be able to buy and purchase homes. We want to be able to protect our families. Maybe we want to go have a little fun on the weekend and go to the movies or bowling or something that we enjoy. And we want to make sure that our kids are safe and happy and they get a good education and they can have a good life. And then we've got these political power brokers that are just trying to maintain business as usual and protect um their own power. And it's at the detriment of us, the average American people, or the average American voters, average Arizonans. And it's disgusting. I mean, it's disgusting.
I totally agree. Um, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I dropped out of the Republican Party and became an independent and decided that the political parties were doing more harm than good and that their primary objective was to pit us against one another because as you said, most Americans all want the same thing: prosperity, peace,
Mhm.
safety.
Yep.
And having these two political parties with such of their own agendas that don't line up to the people's agenda, it seems like a complete lose lose for us as voters, which is probably why so few voters are showing up. Hey there, co parents. It's Billie Tarascio with Modern Law, and let me tell you about our Family Wizard, our preferred co parenting app. It's a game changer. I use it myself. With features like documented calls, secured messaging, shared calendars, and more, our Family Wizard makes co parenting smoother than ever. Trust me, I've seen the difference that it can make. Join the over 1 million parents and family law professionals who trust our Family Wizard to make co parenting easier. Ready to take some stress out of co parenting? Head to ourfamilywizard.com/modern law. So, if
Yep.
you're elected, what will you do? You still have to work with these people and in this disgusting system.
Yep. And that's a great question. And I think that just to I'll answer your question in one half a second, but I think you see this happening, from the top down. We see it in federal races. We saw it in 2016 when President Trump decided to run, that he was on the outside of politics and wasn't really welcome to the party. You've also seen it um with Clinton and Sanders in 2016, where he was blocked. And so I think it is a theme that exists, this political status quo and maintaining that, so that and I think that if there has been one of the things that Donald Trump has really brought to light is this idea of, let's let the people decide. Like, let's really give it to the people and let the people decide. And so to answer the final question, or the second part of your question, um which was, what do I do when I go down to the state house when I win? And I think that that's really the root of why they're attacking me so viciously, is because they are scared. We do have, all indicators are pointing to the fact that my campaign is gaining steam. We have raised money from so many individual contributions here in Arizona within my district. We have had people coming out of the woodwork. It has been unprecedented, the number of support we have placed over, which 500-yard signs in Gilbert. We had almost 3,000 signatures. We got 156 individual contributions in the first 14 days after I announced my candidacy. And so we have just been getting so much positive feedback from voters. And that's why I believe that they are coming after me, is because they are scared. And because when I do go down to the Capitol, my reason for being there is to do the work of the people, to let's work on these very difficult problems. Let's get rid of cronyism down at the legislature. Let's make sure that we have a new a new wave of conservative leadership that wants to actually solve these problems. Let's create a comprehensive agenda and start to chip away. Like, we know that these are the problems. Water is a great example. We are trying to play politics with water. Water is one of the most precious resources that we as a desert state have. It impacts everything from housing to business to economic development, and to recreation, all of it. And Arizona has done a great job with water historically, and now we're starting to play politics with water. Like, let's not screw it up now, because we've done a great job, and they're politicizing water, and it is ridiculous, because it is not meant to be a political resource. It
Right.
is a necessity, and that is where my background lies. I did it 24 years ago. Governor Ducey had appointed me to one of his water boards right before leaving office, and it's something that I am very passionate about, and it's an issue that needs to be fixed. We have the great water buffaloes of years past, like John Kyle, and unfortunately we have lost some of that expertise down at the state house, and now it's turned into a political boondoggle, and we need to fix it. So that's just an example of one issue. Um but let's just do the work. I am not looking to be in office forever. I have kids and a family and a life, but I do think that my skill set lends itself to rolling up my sleeves, going down there, finding common sense solutions that are going to work for Arizonans, and putting politics to the side, and getting the job done, so that I can then go home and be with my kids.
Yeah. Can you explain how water's being politicized? Because it just
Yes.
seems so ridiculous. So, how does that work?
It's a really long answer,
Oh, is it? Okay.
but let me maybe just so Arizona gets its water in 3 ways, like 3 kind of big ways. We have our apportionment of the Colorado River watershed. We're one of 7 states that share that.
Mhm,
We also have underground aquifers, which
mhm.
is a unique characteristic to our topography, and that does make our water supply more robust than other states, like, for example, Nevada. And then we have the Central Arizona Project, which was done decades ago to help bring water from our reservoirs down into the valley where we have a higher population density. And so those 3 things are the primary water resources that we have. We also have water districts there that help manage those 3 sets of water resources. And then we have the 100-year assured water supply, which means that we have to prove that we have 100 years of water to be able to do certain things like build homes or businesses. Um, and that was how it was set up. Agriculture uses more water than residential homes. As we have lost some of our agriculture in this state, we've gained back some of those water shares because they're not being put out as quickly. And residential water usage typically recycles. So a lot of cities will rehabilitate their water and put it back into the I'm missing the term for it, but back into public use. And so it doesn't get used as quickly as it would if it were apportioned for agriculture. So as our population has grown, we actually have stayed water neutral because of that shift between agriculture and residential. And so that's the first way that they're politicizing it is most people don't know that our water usage has gone down as our population has gone up, and then now that our population has boomed to a certain point, it's neutral because of the decline in agriculture. So that's the first thing. The second
But
thing
wait,
is
because I still don't get it. So what's the Republican position and what's the Democratic position with regards to agriculture and residential?
so it is just a hot mess. It's not even a Republican versus a Democrat. It's like tribal. It's a hot mess. So in my opinion, the first thing is we need to establish what is true. So let's start with what is true. What is our water situation today? How is it being used? How is it being managed? And what do we have? And then let's look at the projections and figure out what do we need. So over the
Right.
next 20 years, this is what we're going to need. And then how do we get there? That's what's not being done.
Oh, wow. We can't even get to basic problem solving.
Correct. Yes.
Okay,
Because
sorry.
there's
I cut
scare
you off. Keep
tactics.
going.
No, I mean we're going down a long rabbit hole. But
Okay.
but I
All
think
right.
that answers your question. I think that basic problem solving. What do we have? What do we
Right.
need?
Right.
How do
How
we
are we
get
gonna get
there?
it? Yeah.
Yep. But you have to understand the historical context to know what we have because even that what I just explained about agriculture use
Mhm,
versus
mhm,
residential use,
mhm.
there are legislators who don't even know that.
Okay.
And so without understanding that very fundamental principle, you don't even know what we have.
Sure. I see. Okay. Well, th- the last thing I guess I want to ask you about is what is your position on Gilbert's handling of the Gilbert Goon situation?
So it's a good question. And I thought about this a lot. Obviously, like I said, I have kids. I have kids whose safety I worry about every single day that they leave my home. Um, First, and I want to start by saying it's really sad. I think as a community, we are devastated that this happened here. Um, I think that obviously we could have done better as a community. I think that goes without saying because it was happening. So, clearly there was a break somewhere. And I don't understand the local components, the local law enforcement pieces that happen. So I don't want to comment on things that I don't know the details of. Um, but I think that obviously there were things that happened that should have been prevented, and we should have done more. Um, so I'm concerned. I think as a mother, I'm concerned. As a community, we're concerned, and I think we need to do better. And at like I said, with schools, we're trying. We went and had our we've done some initiatives to try to do our part, and make sure that solutions are being given to students and faculty to make sure that they know what to do and that they have the tools to empower um, themselves to do it. And that we also communicated with parents. We had um, a little toolkit that was sent out for family discussion so that they could talk about these things at home around the kitchen table. And I think anytime you can empower families to have conversations about important topics at home, that usually cuts right to the root of where problems get solved. And so anyway, I don't want to go down another rabbit hole, but yeah, it's concerning. I think that we definitely could have done better and need to do better moving forward.
What does accountability look like, and how do we do better moving forward? I guess that's a two-part question.
Well, and I think, are you asking as a in an elected capacity, as a citizen, I guess conceptually, like just my ideas, how are you asking that?
No specific angle. I'm just asking for, like, what are your thoughts? And that those thoughts might be in a elected capacity. Here's what I might do differently, or here's what I think we should see, or here's a policy that could work, or it could just be, you get to answer it however you'd like.
Okay. Um, I think let me think about that for a minute. I think we always and I answered it this way a little bit with your question before, but I had the unique opportunity to be an interim school principal for 1,000 student elementary school. And in that time leading, that's a lot of kids and a lot of parents and a lot of staff that I was in charge of every single day. And anytime that something would happen, I tried to figure out what is the root cause. And and the way that I ran or led the school was we had to have foundational principles. So if kids weren't safe, you can't create culture. If you
Right.
don't have culture, you can't learn. And so you have to start with safety, and then you have to build culture, and then you can build academic knowledge. If you try to do that the other way, it doesn't work. If you try to start with academics, but no one's safe, you have chaos. If you try to build culture without safety, that doesn't happen, right? And so I think anytime I try to look at a problem, I try to figure out what is the foundational principle to solve the problem. And when it comes to the Gilbert Goons, that's what I've tried to think about is where did the foundation break down? And how do we establish that to be able to fix it? And I think you get to two places. I think number one, obviously there probably was some sort of breakdown at home, where parents didn't know where their kids were, or they didn't have the ability to help monitor them. And I don't want to pass judgment on the whys and hows with that. So then as a community, what can we do to support the family? And I think there was a breakdown there as well. And so what happened in our community to not be able to help keep these areas safe when kids were out at night? Do we need better curfew restrictions? Do we need um some sort of loitering or trespassing ordinance? Do we need stronger and so that I think is the community component. How do we what needs to be tweaked to be able to keep kids safe when they're out? And do we need additional either support to law enforcement or community ordinances to help keep kids safe? And without knowing enough about the local laws, I don't want to comment on it because it's not something that I'm well versed in. And then from a state perspective, which would be where my elected capacity would come into play, that falls outside of local jurisdiction. So are there things that the state can do to provide tools to local law enforcement or to communities to help reinforce those safety measures?
Okay. And you're not sure if there are at the state level anything that
Correct.
would necessarily influence local level. I totally agree with you. A- as a business owner, if something goes wrong, my first question is, okay, what went wrong? Do we have a policy? Was the policy followed? It's the same
Correct.
analysis. Do we
Mhm.
have a law? Did we enforce the law?
Mhm.
Is the law working as it should?
Right.
And I think where most people have landed is we do have laws. We
Mhm.
do have laws, and they weren't enforced.
Right.
I mean, that's what we see. And there's nothing, I mean, we have curfew laws.
Mhm.
Although Preston was killed at 9:30 p.m.
Right.
So it's not that that is going to be an end all be all.
No.
But we do have laws. We have laws and we have sentences, and it appears that those laws are not being enforced by police in terms of arrests, and prosecutors are also declining charges sometimes,
Right.
or agreeing to very, very gentle plea deals.
Right. Yeah. And so there are it, and again, I'm not a lawyer. So it sounds like there are systemic problems that need to be fixed. And I also think we need to talk to our kids. I mean, I think we need to talk to our kids and we need to engage with our kids and we need to know what our kids are up to and we need to listen to our kids when they tell us that things are going wrong. And then we need to say something. And and as a mom, we've had many, many conversations before this happened. Now that it has happened again, I think because I've been in a school, I see the things that kids say every day, and mine was in elementary school, and so there's been a lot of conversations in the car and around the kitchen table with my kids for years, and I'm not a perfect parent by any stretch. I drop the football every day, the metaphorical football.
Mhm.
I fumble it, and my kids aren't perfect, but I think as parents, like we and as a community, we have to have these conversations with our kids, and we need to, put down our phones and talk about hard things and give them tools because a lot of times I think, you know, they're they want guidance from us to know how to be good people. Our job as parents is to try to raise good little humans. And again, none of us are perfect, but we've got to take that responsibility every day to talk to our kids and to answer those questions. And then as a community, we have to reinforce it and hold people accountable.
It's a really great point because there's a lot of anger and frustration towards police and local government, but we have the greatest impact
Mhm.
in our homes and with our communities and with our school. And we, as just Gilbert residents, have the ability to make change, even if we don't see the changes that we'd like to see from other people. So that's an
Mhm.
empowering message. I love that.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's where those are the things I always tell my kids. You have to control the things that you can control. And the things that we can control is how we behave. We can control ourselves. That's really the only thing we can control is ourselves. And so if we take that power and that accountability and that responsibility back, sometimes magic can happen when that
I
happens.
totally agree. Totally agree. So thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your information and your position. And I can't stress enough how important it is that people vote in this primary and take the time to listen to as many of the candidates as you can in real conversations. I really like this format because we get to see the real you.
Yep.
It's not
Yep.
scripted, it's not written. We get to see you. That's your kitchen.
Yep. It's the kitchen. And there's some great, the Gilbert Chamber on their website, they did candidate interviews. It's about 30 minutes, and we're
Mhm.
answering questions that are much more related to business, of course. But they have the entire interview for every candidate who's running, not just for the state legislature, but also for local town council races as well. And so that's another great resource if people just want to hear the long answers, because I think we live in a world of sound bites and
Mhm,
and
mhm.
Twitter headlines, and that just shows this tiny little glimpse. It doesn't let you really see who the candidate is. And I have given my phone number out everywhere. I don't know if you want me to give my phone number here, but I'm more than happy to give my cell phone number, because I welcome phone calls from voters who want to discuss these issues or have a question, or even if you know, want to challenge something that I said, I would love to talk about it. I'm very, very transparent. And so I'm more than happy to give my email, phone number, and also my social media handles or DMs there are great ways to get a hold of me as well. And so I welcome conversations with voters. We're knocking about 3 hours every day, going door to door, talking to people. So again, I'll let you decide the best way to do that, but I can say my phone number right now if you want me to.
Why don't we print it?
Okay.
Just in case you gotta take it down at some point, I don't know.
Okay.
But thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for taking the time to answer all of my invasive questions. I really appreciate it, and it was great to talk to you.
Thank you, Billy. It was great. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk to you as well.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Divorce Podcast. Remember, anything you've heard today or anything you read online is not the replacement for actual consultation with an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Even if you called in and we spoke to you, you are anonymous and we don't have your details and you have not become a client of Modern Law. However, we would love to speak with you, or you should seek out the advice of legal counsel or counseling or any other expert near you. And if you have an idea for a show topic or you need to speak with an attorney in Arizona, you can reach me at info@mymodernlaw.com.